Yeah, we're back for the first time this season. As you can see, we're working at some glitches. We got some new tech upstairs, so we're training in on some of that. High five to the tech crew. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lakin Ani. I am Program Director at the North Dakota Women's Business Center, where we help people start and grow business. So, what we're going to do today is hear from our friend Jordan Loftis about his business story course. But before we jump into that, we've got some housekeeping items. That's the wrong way. See, first time jitters. First time back. So special thanks to our sponsors. These folks help us keep the lights on. Naturally, we don't have many expenses with this event, but we certainly appreciate the time that our employers allow us to be here to do this, and also the financial backing that we receive from some of them as well. So if you see them, thank them, and patronize their businesses. How many newbies? Any first-timers? Yes. Excellent, welcome. If this is your first time in audience or watching on our live streams, either Facebook or YouTube, welcome. We're so excited you're here. 1 Million Cups is a free weekly program that gives local businesses or nonprofits or idea people the opportunity to pitch, like I said, their idea, engage with the community for advice or feedback. So we will do a Q&A session afterwards. There's a slide that talks about that. It's coming up pretty soon. The big takeaway, though, here at 1 Million Cups is, can we change the face of our startup community over 1 million cups of coffee? We make this joke all the time, so I won't today, but we're getting close to 1 million cups. Carl is here. Oh my gosh, Carl. Where are you? 72,000 for those of you watching online. We've got a ways to go. Like I said, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. You're welcome to use either this giant mug here. We'll have a mic runner today to ask your question in the audience. If you're shy, though, and don't want to handle the microphone, you can use #1MCND or drop your question into the Facebook chat, and Kirsten will ask the question for you. Do we have any community announcements today? Yes, there are. All right. Here we go. There we go. I think you're ready.
Good morning. I'm Ellen Huber, Business Development Director for the City of Mandan, and we are excited to be preparing for our fourth ever Business Pitch Challenge in Mandan. And so if you or anyone you know is working on starting or ramping up a business, this is a competition for businesses that are less than 2 years of age. And that's not necessarily like registered with the North Dakota Secretary of State's office, but truly operational, less than 2 years, and not having yet raised more than or generated more than $250,000 in revenue. We have fabulous prizes up to a $10,000 forgivable loan from the Mandan Growth Fund, and lots of cash prizes and really valuable services from other businesses. But I think the most important thing that contestants receive out of participating in this competition is the opportunity to just really fine-tune that idea into something that people will truly pay for that product or service, great coaching, and publicity along the way. And so we ask you to just please share this opportunity with anyone you know who might be interested. The deadline to enter is January 27th, and it's just a fairly short and sweet 2-page application, an executive summary of the business plan. A selection committee then goes through those, picks out the top 4 finalists, and from there they have an opportunity to further refine that information, receive some coaching, and then present in front of a live audience to a new panel of judges. And new this year is a People's Choice Award. So we encourage you to put March 23rd on your calendars and come show up and cheer for and support these entrepreneurs in our community. Thank you.
Yeah, great, Ellen. It's an event that we look forward to being a part of every year. Tell all your friends. Mandy.
So we are bringing Beautiful Wholeness back for the first time in 3 years in February in a bigger hotel setting. So this is a life and leadership coaching day for women. It is for women who are hopeful and want to maybe step into leadership in their own lives. They don't necessarily have a leadership title, but they want to grow their leadership skills. It's for women who want to bring their teams and grow as a team, and definitely for the entrepreneurs who know that personal growth and leadership development is important, but never seem to find the time to do it. So early bird tickets are on sale right now for $77, and it's happening downtown. You can go to beautifulwholeness.com to get all of the details and the tickets.
Awesome. Thanks, Mandy. Does anybody else have a community announcement? You certainly don't need a slide. No. Okay. Very good. So without further ado, let me introduce today's presenter. Jordan Loftis is the founder of Story Chorus and several other things. He wears so many hats, and it's such a pleasure to meet him, or to have him here today. The first time I heard Jordan speak was actually at Makewell several years ago, and I thought to myself, I'm going to give that guy a stage someday. And I tried real hard with TEDx. It didn't quite work out yet, but here we are today, better late than never. And I'm so excited to hear from you. I'll take this with me. I'll give you that. All right, let's give Jordan a hand.
And as I grew up, I started ghostwriting about 7 years ago, and that dream began to wane as well because I learned about the publishing industry, which I call the cruel land where childhood literary dreams go to die. We're starting on a downer. Happy 2022, everybody. So the publishing industry is a bit of a spectrum, and most of us are familiar with the traditional publishing world. That's if you walk into a library, if you go to Barnes & Noble, that's what those books are going to be from. There's like 5 publishing companies, the big 5 they're called. I call them the 5 mafia families that really run everything. But what I learned is that the system is rigged, and it's characterized by really bad business deals for authors, very little control over their books and content, and authors who still have to do all the work. In fact, just this last year, we started working with an author who was leaving his publisher because he ran the numbers and realized that his most successful book, he had made about $500,000 in a few years, which is amazing for sales, and his publisher had made over $5 million. And he had been the one who did all the marketing, all the sales. He was on the road 300 days a year, and he was like, this doesn't feel like a good deal. In a picture, I think this describes it well. Okay, not to say there aren't wonderful people who work in the industry, it's just the business deals don't really make sense anymore. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have the self-publishing industry, which, again, can be very, very cool. However, I realized it's characterized by a few things. Questionable quality, because there's a really low barrier to entry. Anybody can publish, which means content can be of variable quality. Now, there can be amazing, amazing books. Like, has anybody heard of The Martian by Andy Weir? It got made into a movie with Matt Damon, and it made millions of dollars, got turned into a movie, so it was a standout unicorn success. But that is absolutely the exception rather than the rule. There's over 1 million books published every year, and so then when you're self-published, it is just a brutal fight for attention, and it's also labor-intensive because it's self-publishing. You don't have a team, and if you want a team, you need to go find one. So you need to go hire editors or designers, figure out the logistics, and it's just hard to do. It's really the Wild West. And so what I wondered, along with so many other hopeful writers and authors, I thought, is there any hope to be successful here? And it got a little bit depressing because I thought this thing that I really wanted to do, these stories that I thought that I had in me that I wanted to tell, and the experience that I wanted to share with the world, or at least my grandma who promised to buy the first copy, I thought, is that gone? Is that just not going to happen? So it turns out, though, yes, there is a better way. And it's the best of both worlds, which we call hybrid publishing at StoryChorus. And so what we do is we marry the rigor and the professionalism of the traditional publishing agency or traditional publishing world with the autonomy and agility and control of the self-publishing world. So our model works like this. We help leaders write, publish, and market profitable books. And we measure profit in two ways. It's impact and income. Impact happens when a book changes a life. How many of you would say you've read a book or listened to one that's changed your life? Right? Because if we change our minds, we know we change our lives. The way we think colors and determines how we behave, how we see ourselves in the world, what our place is, and really what our ability to impact it is. Books are so powerful, and I've been obsessed with them since an early age when I first learned to read. Alice in Wonderland was the first book that I had ever read without pictures, and it just blew my mind, and I read it every year up until about 7th grade when it was not cool for a boy to read Alice in Wonderland, I found out in the locker room. More of a mathlete than an athlete. But the question is, I painted a very grim picture, and so where does the financial success come from? Right, profit, we measure in impact and income. So where can this income come in for these leaders? Now that green dot represents the less than 1% of books published that will sell more than 1,000 copies this year. And in fact, I didn't have time to make all the dots for the hundreds of thousands of books that will sell less than 100 copies. Couple that with book sales driving less than 10% of the average pro author's income, and you get a pretty bleak picture. So we decided to play by different rules. Instead of a volume game, we focus on strategic value for a defined target audience. Think about like a microbrewery versus a big boy brewery. It's very specialized, it's very niche, and it's focused on a specific group of people with specific tastes and proclivities. So with our model called Swift Publish, which I'll tell you about in just a moment, one copy of your book in the right hands is worth more than 1,000 copies in the wrong hands. So we don't play the volume game. Instead of selling books, we use books to sell products and services, to build valuable brands, and to raise money for world-changing causes. In fact, we donate a book every year to do for a nonprofit because it helps move the needle so much. And so the process that we work through, it's called Swift Publish, and this is the bread and butter of what we do at StoryChorus. It starts with strategy. Before we ever start writing a word, people come to their nerd friend Jordan, and we start asking, what does success look like for you as the author, personally, professionally, and financially? And then most importantly, what does success look like for your target reader? What are their biggest challenges? What are their biggest problems? What experience do you have that can help them avoid the potholes on the road to success, the scars that you have? How can you show those to help people in a very specific and defined way? And ultimately, we're asking, who are we writing to? Because who we write for drives the what gets included. And another question I really like to ask is, if your book was an employee, what job would you be hiring it to do? What would its job description be? What would this little 5.5 by 8.5 thing go out in the world to do for you and for your readers? So we start with that strategy question, and then we get into the writing. And I'm a ghostwriter, and so our process is very interview-based, and it's super, super fun. I love these days. I come back home more energetic. I fly out to wherever the author is, spend 4 days just absolutely grilling them. I extract, organize, and then we publish their knowledge, and it's really an old way of writing books. This is how most books used to be written. Leaders would have someone called an amanuensis, and this person, that actually means slave at handwriting, so I'm not using that word so much anymore. And my wife's like, no, I like that. I think that's good. But I don't use that, more of a scribe. And so we come in and really help someone in their voice and tone tell their story. We have a great creative director, so then we treat a book visually as a brand, because the two most important parts of a book, unfortunately, are the title and the cover, so that people actually want to pick it up and read it. And then we have an author guide who helps with all the logistics and get the thing out into the world so that traction can happen, which is the most important part. Now that you have this beautiful book in about 6 months, what is it going to do for you personally, professionally, financially, and what's it going to do for your readers? Here are a few that we've published here in the last 3 years. We just turned 3, by the way, which is really exciting. I was blown away we made it to 1, frankly. And so here's a few that we've done, and what's really exciting is some of these have raised tens of thousands of dollars for nonprofits. Some of them have sold tens of thousands of copies, and one of them even drove over $1.5 million of revenue in 2 weeks for the author. And I was just like, this works. This is so awesome that this works. And so we are not going to stop. However, we do have some growth challenges, and I think this is an interesting question that Million Cups ask is what are your biggest challenges? And we're facing 3 main challenges right now. It's number 1, we just can't meet the demand. As we stand, we couldn't start a new book until March of 2023. And while that's really cool, it's also getting hard because there's a lot of people who are like, well, I don't want to wait that long, so I'm going to have to find something else. And you're like, oh, but your story is so amazing and we could help you. And if you just wait 1.5 years, you're going to love it. But we're running into that as a business where we're really at a sticky point. Because we have an unscalable model, Jordan doesn't scale. It's shocking, but I do most of the writing now and have really struggled to find the right writing partners who can do what I do, because it's such an odd thing. It's not just being a good writer. You also have to be able to interview someone and structurally understand how a book comes together, and then understand the business use cases for it and how to dive into, the target reader's head, and then, of course, how to help them be profitable and successful, as well as not be weird. And in a room with someone for 4 days, I mean, we're all a little weird, but I have some horror stories. And number 3, we really do have a personality-based brand right now. I would say it's an excellent personality that it's based on. But the issue is I'm struggling to make that leap where really selling the team instead of just me. And so how do you scale, again, yourself? And so that's what we're running into. So here in the next 2 months, I'm really excited about this. We're making a big bet to solve all 3 of these problems, and we're doing it the only way I know how. We're launching a new service with a book. It's called The Hardest Lesson, and it's a system to transform your hard-won experience into a profitable book. So the book will teach people, the book will teach people how to do that, and then, of course, we have a service to help you do that if you feel like it's not something you're capable of. But the premise is leaders will come, and they'll share the hardest lesson they ever learned about whatever their area of expertise is. And really, what are your customers struggling with? Write a short, strategic, pointed book about those things, and then use it as the top of a marketing funnel, part of your sales enablement strategy, demand generation, whatever it is. This service comes in at about half the investment of our custom and boutique service, and it's going to be able to move much more quickly with a different kind of writer where we can still do it really well, but it's not going to require flights to where they're at and all those kind of things, because this is really for that ROI to move the needle on your products or services or raising money for your organization. And when it comes out, I would love to give anyone here who wants one a free copy. It really will just teach you how to do it. If you've ever wanted to write a book to grow your business, you can QR code it, or you can go to that embarrassingly long URL. I didn't realize it was going to be like that till I put it on the slide, and I was like, well, they can figure it out. So QR code it if you're interested, but thank you so much for letting me tell you about our business and share some of the challenges we're having.
Thanks, Jordan. Go ahead and have a seat. Excellent.
Oh, I'll go over here.
Okay.
Are
good.
those
Very
brass
good.
knuckles?
Those are brass knuckles.
Is that what happens if I talk too long?
Yes. We got rid of the shepherd's cane, and now I just get to threaten you with these. Yeah.
They are legitimately brass knuckles.
They are. a conversation piece on a coffee table. Evan is our mic runner today. If you've got questions in the audience, feel free to raise your hand. He will come present you with this large, beautiful cup, and we'll hear more from Jordan. So thank you again for your conversation, your story. Your wife was supposed to be here with us today.
Yes.
And there was a bit of a scheduling conflict, but I'm still curious. She is also an entrepreneur. So how does that work with your family, you both owning businesses and having 3 small kids? I can imagine your life is beautifully chaotic.
Yeah, that's a good question. We like to use the word integration. We just realized that the idea of putting our businesses in boxes and then our children in boxes, I tried, it doesn't work, they don't stay in. and putting them in these neat little boxes just doesn't really work, because it's interesting. When you start new businesses, they're kind of like babies, and they need a ton of your time. And then when you have young kids, they need a ton of your time. And so it's like when you don't have very much time, both important things need all of your time. Mm-hmm. And so what we've had to do is just really operate in our strengths and come with an understanding that, like, hey, I'm going to be wingman for you sometimes, and you're going to be wingman for me. And if we got to grind, we're just going to encourage each other or say, like, hey, you know what? That's probably not a big deal. You should sleep.
Yeah, good to know. Good to know. Johnny, you've got a first question.
If you go back to your first slide, your picture of you, that 7th grade person, are you living your literary dream now? Would that person be very happy with where you're at now?
That's such a good question. In a sense, no, because that dream, while not impossible, I realized was not going to be worth it for me at this point. And so, but on the other side, I get to tell amazing stories, and every time I do a new book, I get a mentor. And I get to sit in the room with these super successful people and ask them any question I want, and then end up getting the moments inevitably in every book where they're like, I've never told anyone this. And you're like, this could go one of 2 ways. So in a sense, yes, I'm tickled. I get to use my craft to serve people, but it doesn't look the way I thought, but that's okay.
Often our dreams don't turn out that way, right?
Yeah, somehow.
Especially as 7th graders.
I mean, the NFL thing didn't happen either. So.
Oh, man, that was a heck of a weekend for football. Anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to touch on, I feel your pain as far as that challenge of scale.
Yeah.
Because you really rely on the experience and your passion for ghostwriting. Is there an opportunity almost for some sort of an apprenticeship sort of process, something like that, where you can work with somebody and help? It's a long play, certainly, but I don't know how else do you do that?
That is so cool that you brought that up, because just Friday I interviewed a writing assistant as an apprentice. That's exactly what I'm going to do, and it is a long play, because what had happened is I brought really capable writers and journalists into the process, and I just kind of threw a project at them, did not set them up for success, ended up paying them for work I had to redo. They felt burned, I felt burned, and it just sucked. And so I realized, like, last year, we do the same marketing that we tell everybody else to do, and it got to the point where it was working so well, I actually had to shut it off because we couldn't grow anymore. I couldn't go to 18 cities, but I couldn't find the right people. And so I just hired this kid who is, he's like 22, but he's great. He's a diamond in the rough, but we're going to spend the next couple years working projects together as he learns step by step. So that's exactly the idea. And when I come back in 2 years, I'll let you know.
Thanks, Evan.
Hi, thanks for being here. So you started in 2019, is that right?
At the very end of 2018.
Awesome, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you've gone through this hump with COVID, and how has that allowed you in any way to use technology in a different way to expand what you're doing, or how has that factored in?
That's also a really good question, because I felt like this was after, like, when 2020 started, I felt like this was the absolute worst decision I could have made to start this business. Because one, no joke, I had just gotten back from a project in New Orleans. It was a Wednesday morning at 10:22, and I opened AM, and I opened my email, and I had 2 or 3 emails in a row, and we lost half of our revenue in these 3 emails. And I was like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? And I tried not to panic, and then I started feeling really sick, and I had COVID.
Oh no.
And I honestly, I almost died too. It was really, really bad. And so then I was just out for like a month or 5 weeks. And so I had all this time between coughs to really think about this. And I just thought, okay, we're all right for now. We have a bit of a runway. So what are we gonna do? And the question of like, okay, this disrupted everything. And so I started asking like, well, 10 years from now, this will probably be obsolete, right? Like this whole thing will probably be done. So how can technology be used here? And if we were gonna put ourselves out of business, how would we do it? How would we disrupt us? And so I started bringing in some AI technology into the interviews, and so in real time, it's being transcribed with some like GP3 stuff and some different AI things, and I really do think we're going to be able to get to having like training sets where we can stick a bunch of books in and be able to actually choose what kind of style we'd like, and then just work through a self-interviewing process where the computer will be Jordan, and then we'll be more the human touch that you can't replicate with a machine at this point, depending on what Elon Musk does, I guess. But that's our long-term, like 10-year vision, is to bring AI into it.
Awesome, great question. Ellen.
So how do you know what you know now? Take us on a little bit of the high points of your journey from that 7th grader to where you're at now with your business.
So from 7th grade on, I just wrote all the time. I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and studied the craft and fell in love with the process and the stories themselves. And I was always talking about them and just absolutely obsessed. And so as I got good at that craft, I just didn't know how to monetize it because of everything I talked about. It got very daunting. Well, I got my first opportunity to ghostwrite a book from a friend who I had sat on a board with at this nonprofit. And it's like the lamest thing, because he's like, dude, I need someone to pinch it. I know you write. Can you ghostwrite this thing? And it was the first time I'd ever gotten paid to write. And so I was like, absolutely. So I ghostwrote a book about foot health for this orthotics manufacturer, and I can spell plantar fasciitis. Very proud of that. But that was the first time I'd ever been paid to write, and I had ever been paid to do something like this. And I realized, like, okay, I can do this, and my writing can have value in a different way. And so I started doing more work for that publisher, and I ended up ghostwriting somewhere around 30 books for them in like 3 years. And so again, it was just putting in the reps, learning then to make books, and then seeing how so many failed. They died on the vine, and by failing, I just mean they sold a couple hundred copies, and everybody was just kind of disappointed. You work so hard on something, and then it just doesn't do anything. And so that got discouraging, but then I started seeing this pattern of what did work to move the needle in a different way. And then I stayed in marketing and did that as a side hustle. Actually, the first time I spoke at 1 Million Cups here was like 4 years ago, and I was still side hustling when I was working at CoSchedule. And I kept putting in those reps in midnight coffee sessions until I finally had an opportunity where someone came and was like, hey, I want to do a book. And I added $10,000 to a normal price and shipped a proposal. And my wife and I had prayed and talked about it, and we were like, if he says yes, we're going to start this company. And we did, with one client, and now it's grown.
It's incredible. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It's a leap of faith.
Yeah, it was. It was very scary. Because my first business had failed miserably. My first business was just an absolute train wreck that left us almost $20,000 in credit card debt. right before our first daughter was born, who almost died in the NICU, and then my wife almost died giving birth to her, and then I didn't have a job, and then I got $500 to ghostwrite a book about feet. And I was like, this is my life.
Sometimes a crumb is all you need, though.
That's right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mandy.
Okay, I actually have two questions. The first question is, how many books per year do you take on right now? And the second is, I know a lot of hybrid publishers also offer marketing for people who have self-published their books under their own publishing company. Is that something that you also offer or you've thought of? And how do you, basically, how have you decided whether or not you're going to do that?
Yeah, great questions. So we do about, right now, we do about 12 to 16. The goal was to do like 50 last year, and then again, I explained that just was awful, a terrible idea. Because I learned that you can grow yourself out of business, you know? And so we're focusing on that 12 to 16, and then we'll slowly tier that up and just build the wait list for right now. I think this new offering, where it's a lot shorter, quicker turn, and less complicated, can help that and be more scalable. But on the marketing side of things, we do have a service called Content for Profits. I'm very literal. And but again, that's hitting the same kind of wall that I have to meter growth on it. But it's a lot different because we don't try to help people sell copies of books, really. I mean, if it sells, that's great, but we do what I explained. And so that's really what that marketing is focused on. But good question.
Cool. Anybody else have questions from the audience?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It's so long. It is swift.storychorus.com /hardest-lesson.
Evan, Bill's got a question there.
Hey, Bill.
All right, so I definitely enjoy everything I'm seeing here and have played with it a little bit with the ClickFunnels realm, but what type of businesses would you say would really benefit from this? Because you can use books for getting people into your foot clinic. You can use it to sell other books online. You can use it to sell courses. Like, what's kind of becoming your niche that you're finding with this?
Coaches and consultants.
Well, that's easy. And then do you help your clients like build it and set up the funnels and walk them through that whole path, or is that a separate process?
Right now, that's a separate process. We have some partners for that, but we are bringing that in-house.
Cool. Excellent. So you have published your own book, aside from this one that's coming out?
Yes.
Yes. So you've already got one on the table or on the shelf. Can you talk a little bit about that process and what it felt like to actually have your name on the cover?
Yeah, that was, honestly, there's no romance to it anymore to me, just because it's like, it really turns into like we're building decks, you know? It's just like, not that stories aren't sacred and things, but it's just like it's a lot of work, and you kind of know the tools to bring to bear. And so that was fulfilling and like self-actualizing to a degree, but it was a lot more exciting to me to be able to use our process for myself. And I did it from, I started at Cross Ranch when I started writing it, and it was at my doorstep in 23 days.
Wow.
And I don't recommend it, but it works. and it's done exactly what we've hoped that it would do, and I think it's helped a lot of people.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Question from the audience.
Hello, my name is Rhea, and this is the first time I've been here, and it's one of those meant to be moments because I started a blog about a year and a half ago, and it's just been a wonderful addition to my life. It's about weight loss, and I've lost a lot of weight and been taking photos. And
Congratulations.
But what about those people like me who are stubborn and they want their book to be in their words? And do you work with stubborn writers, or do you take on most of the work?
Yeah, so we work with both, and I don't think it's stubborn at all. There's some people who it's a lot better use of their time to just talk, and we work in people's voice and tone because we do understand like it needs to feel authentic and be them. So that's a very important thing. Most of our clients though, just they're not going to sit behind a keyboard and do it. They tried 5 times and they're just like, I want to jab my eyes out. But then there's people who are true creators and true writers. They just like this model better, and so we call those projects manuscript onward, where you come and you bring what you've written, and then we bookify it. Yeah.
Awesome.
And congratulations, by the way, on the blog and everything else. It's cool.
Janelle?
You said
Hey.
that hey Jordan, you donate your time, one book a year, donate your time and support a nonprofit. Tell us about the most recent, I think it's still the most recent, about the local man here in Bismarck that you supported through your work.
Yeah, so we did a book with Ricardo Pierre-Louis here. They run Les Pour la Vie, and that book was very, very special. He has an incredible story. He played soccer for the Haitian national team. He was like the absolute 0.0001% who, made that dream happen of playing professional sports. And then he came to the U.S. without being able to speak English. He spoke 5 other languages but couldn't speak English and enrolled in college. And then passed because he learned English as he was studying. And so now they're nonprofit. He played in like the MLS, and he's just the most remarkable person you could imagine. And so then we partnered with them and told that story to help them use that book to really raise awareness and raise some money and do stuff for that cause. And it is, it's been a really special thing to be able to just give back and say, like, who are the people who are doing amazing work, and this is how we can best help them. It is, in fact, we can actually back up so you can see it. Ashton Hoff also donated her time and cover. It's time to design the cover and the interior with the good kids. It's called Hunger for Hope, and that's Ricardo right there. So, yeah.
And is there a process, or is it word of mouth based? Is there an application? How do folks find out about that?
Right now, it's people who are kind of in our network and in our orbit that we just hand select. And so this year we're working with a church out of New Orleans that has done a ton for hurricane relief and that kind of thing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Janya.
Back again. So during the course of the questions, you said, oh, that's this process and that's this process. Could you talk then a little bit about how your pricing structure works? Is it truly just a one-off, or do you have different levels of service? Or?
Yeah, great question. So with the Swift projects, we start at a certain investment. We start at $48,000 with those, and then we add on if you want audiobooks, if you want extra marketing kind of content and help per Mandy's question, and then we do. Then it's a lot less investment if you've written the book, right? And so then we shepherd that to publish, or we work with some traditionally published authors to help them with some strategy and stuff. So it's more consulting, but really 95% of our projects right now are that Swift, just doing a full book project, and then this hardest lesson will be half of the investment and half of the time. And so that's a gamble. I don't know if it will work, but doggone, I hope it will.
Worth a shot anyway.
Yeah.
Did you have a question, Evan?
Well, it's more of a comment, I guess. I guess what I'm seeing here is really kind of a benefit to humanity, if you will. It's taking people with some good, tangible ideas and finding a way to articulate those ideas properly, but then also targeting that audience. And so scalability issues aside, that seems like a really big idea to me. I mean, like a really big idea that authors that have gone through this process, if they were kind of in their own little pile somewhere, kind of like your big 5, whatever, that seems like a place readers would go to find content. So no pressure, but it's like Google. So make that happen.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We are kind of building like the Story Chorus library, if you will, where people could get in and go book to book to book. Because here's the thing, like I talked about all the business case for this, but it's not like it is such a fulfilling process with so much soul and meaning, because I really do believe people's stories are sacred. And so books are very important to me because it's someone's life on a page. And yes, we make it helpful and we help them grow the stuff they want to grow. But everybody we work with, though, I think every time they get a customer, they're helping someone, and they're helping a life. We've literally seen books that have saved marriages, helped people move from one city to another and start a brand new life, start businesses. It's just an amazing catalyst. And so there is like so much heart and passion in it too. But I think I metered that back so that my dreamer was really focused around, well, how do we make this sustainable for us and our authors?
Good point, Evan. You've talked a lot about hearing people's stories and how they're sacred, and I would imagine at some points they can get pretty heavy. So how do you manage that yourself to stay mentally sharp and to maybe not assume their burdens if they're there?
It's actually a really, really hard thing to do, especially since I've had kids. I'm already pretty sentimental, and then now that I have kids, it's like I cry at commercials and stuff. And so there are, you hear stories like people, I literally heard a recording of a woman who was on her deathbed, like sharing how to live a fulfilled life for her kids. Like I heard her voice, and you just hear these super heavy things. And for me, I kind of see it as like, I'm almost like this Sherpa, where it's like you can come across and there's just power in community. And even if community is only a couple people, like entering into someone's world and shouldering that for them and then helping them tell and share that, it's actually an extremely healing process for them as well. I feel like a therapist sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's just like an incredible experience of telling your story raw and real and just completely opening the kimono, and it gets wild sometimes, like really wild, but it's also really healing for them and really helpful for me. And while it is heavy, I've learned to separate myself from my work and therefore separate myself from their situation.
Okay. How did you do that?
I just really had to. I had to set boundaries and just realize this is where you end and this is where I begin, and this is what our relationship is. Because then it's really hard not to kind of be best friends with every author too, right? Because you get so close. And so I'd say that's probably the hardest part to navigate, is how can I then like honor those relationships well, because they feel very close to me and I feel very close to them.
Right.
But now we have to go do the next thing. And so I'd say I'm still learning,
Yeah.
But my wife's been really helpful.
She's great.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay. How many books have you written thus far? You might have.
Personally, I've done over 50 now. And I've worked on well over 100 just in the publishing thing, and then I've written 2 of my own.
Right. Do you have a favorite?
Okay, so for the ghostwritten stuff, there's a book called Conquer that is my favorite. It's Top Center. That guy was drug into the United States from Mexico by coyotes when he was 6 years old. Through the desert, no water, couldn't swim. They tied a rope to him to drag him across the river, and now he's just built kind of an empire. And what he does now is help minority leaders start their own businesses.
Wow.
And he's just such a remarkable person who challenged me on so many levels, and it's also been ultra successful.
Yeah, that's incredible. What a way to get here.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, man. Other questions? We've got a few minutes left. Way in the back there.
So if you could handpick a client, what would the characteristics of that client be for you?
So that's a really good question. They're going to have So there's like a business side and then kind of like a culture heart side. So I'll start on the business side and then I'll talk about the culture and the heart. On the business side, they're going to have a really high ticket offer. So they're going to be able to quickly get their investment back and then some, because their deals are worth so much, and so we can accelerate those. And they're going to be in a space as well where there is either a knowledge gap or some kind of like buy-in issues, or again, like they just need to be differentiated and kind of turn them into the zebra and the herd of horses, if you will, so that people really know their stories. Because the only thing that's really unique on this earth anymore aren't ideas typically, it's your story. No one has that. And so that's where the real power is, and then you can connect those. So from a business case, that's who we're looking for in trying to help. But then they have to have the same kind of heart and vibe. They don't have to have the same kind of spiritual outlook. I don't mean that. But I do mean they are someone who first really wants to be of service to people, whether they ever pay them $1 or not. So that they're genuinely there to help, so that they don't want to just write a big sales pitch, because that's not effective, and it's also just like it sucks to work on. So they genuinely need to want to help people and love people well. Oh. And they can't be weird.
In the back.
All right, so you've alluded to traveling all over, and a story in New Orleans, a story of a man I would imagine is in the southern states along the border. How do you find these stories?
99% referral right now. Well, not 99%. I guess I did a lot of hunting and marketing too now in the last year. But the first 2 years, it was almost all referral. Because it is hard to find someone like us, because there isn't a lot of companies that do this or a lot of people who do this. There are some, and there's some really good ones, but then the question is like, well, how do you trust them? Because this is like a high trust kind of situation. Like you have to 100% trust someone with this kind of information and also with like this important of a project. And so the referral is really, really important, because it's like one person saying to the other, like, yeah, this person did this thing for me, and it was like a transformative experience. The trouble can be scaling that, but I think we're starting to translate that well. But referral is pretty huge.
Very good. Mary?
What's the best way to buy your books?
Amazon, because I don't want to ship them anymore. Thank you, though. Yeah, so we publish them to hook up with distribution, depending on where the book needs to go, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Kirsten.
We've got a question from social media. You might know him. His name is Brandon. He asks, what?
Oh boy, I don't know if you should read this.
It seems clean. I'm not sure. I have a question. Okay. What will ever happen to Sanjay and Semper? Sanget and Semper?
Oh, we're not talking about it.
Right.
That's my brother. Go home, Brandon.
If you really cared, you'd be here.
That was so he's teasing me about like my first novel idea. That is, so I don't know what will happen with those two, but unfortunately they probably just need to stay in a drawer somewhere because it's so bad.
I don't know. I think people really love, like, relationships sell, right? That's how you connect to people. It might be fun to do, 20 years down the road, it might be fun to publish your very first work and just see what happens.
It might be.
We've got time for one final question from the audience. If not, we will move into our last one. Ooh, Janelle.
Let's talk about your wife for a minute. It was mentioned that she's an entrepreneur. Let's brag about Joelle and all the work that she's been doing.
Yeah, so she is absolutely incredible, and I think has truly become the best version of herself in the last 2 years. Since starting It's Your Time Wellness, it's a health coaching company, she has just absolutely blossomed and just become everything like I always knew she could be. I'm very, very proud of her, and she's helping hundreds and hundreds of people get healthy in their minds and in their marriages and just in like all these different ways by focusing on their physical and mental health and habits. And that girl grinds. She is just never stopping. I'm so proud of her.
Awesome. High fives for Joelle. All right, final question. We're going to get back through the slide deck here. Evan, take it away.
All right. Jordan, thank you so much for being here, for kicking off 2022 for 1 Million Cups. It's been great to have you here. Last question we like to ask is, what can we, the Bismarck Mandan 1 Million Cups community, do to make you more successful?
I should have thought about my answer to this question. I knew you were going to ask it, but honestly, if you know any really good writers, send them my way. And 2, share your stories, because it has so much more power than you think. You undervalue your own experience and your own expertise, and it's tremendously, maybe even infinitely valuable for other people. So get vulnerable, authentic, and share freely.
And book him for your next keynote speaking opportunity.
Maybe.
All right. Just kidding. Here's what's coming up next. Check it out. Oh, Adam Kempenick's Beatbox Ballet. That's happening at the end of the month. I'm not quite sure what to expect from that, but you'll want to be here. And if you want to apply to present, find us online, 1 Million Cups at BizMan, and we are ready to go. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Jordan, for being here. We'll see you all next week. Have an incredible day.